Hey everybody, it's Tim Hughes here, CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, we're doing the digital download, and I've got Adam, Thomas, Matt, Lenwood, and Lorena. Do you want to introduce yourselves, people? Lorena, I don't think you've got any sound yet, so maybe you're going to do it in mime. I'm not sure, but Adam, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Gray. I'm Tim's business partner and co-founder of DLA Ignite. I've had just the most fantastic week. Everything seems to have gone quite well. I mean, I know it's not over yet, so there's still plenty of time for things to go wrong. But I feel really positive about everything that seems to be happening at the moment, which is nice.
Can you have a chat with Lorena on the chat, Adam?
Yeah, I have been doing.
Okay, cheers.
I'll see if I can give her a hand.
And hi to Will. Hi, Will.
Hey, Will. Poet extraordinaire.
I guess I'll go next.
Yeah, please, Lenwood. You're next on my.
Okay. I'm Lenwood Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of Accelerate. We help enterprises build digital skills. That's our focus. We're partners with DLA Ignite. One of the most important digital skills you need is to be able to connect virtually with people and build relationships. So we're happy to be.
And I'm glad you got the pink shirt memo, Lenwood.
Yeah.
Everyone else has let me down. Matt, we've got a special guest also today. Matt is standing in for Eric. So Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
So I am now a freelance sort of management consultant, and I had a bit of a social epiphany about a year ago, and I joined Eric in about a couple of months ago, really. And so I started to get involved in social media, social selling, that sort of thing. So it's a bit of a journey for me, and I've had a really good and really interesting time, and especially meeting you guys. I also co-present the Big Life Breakfast Burrito with Eric, which is very interesting.
And if you haven't checked out Matt, go and have a look at his LinkedIn profile. Have a look at his content. And we always mention the Breakfast Burrito, which is on Thursdays at 7:45 a.m. UK time. So quite early for maybe some of the people that are watching.
Yeah, but get up anyway.
You set your alarm clocks. And
I've not yet been up to watch the burrito.
Oh, you can catch it on a rerun. We might do Krispy Kreme donuts for dessert.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for tuning in. Thomas, do you want to
say something? That would be good. Sure.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. I'm Thomas Ross. I'm one of the founders for Social Selling HQ, and we are global partners with DLA Ignite, and very proud to promote and work with this incredible team.
And finally, Lorena, you've got some sounds all the way from Lima in Peru.
Yeah. Yes, hi everybody. I'm Lorena Borgo. I am a lawyer and an expert in communications and marketing for lawyers. I am the founder of EDP Consultants Peru, and I'm based in Lima. And I'm so glad to be an associate and contact person here for DLA in Latin America. Thank you very much.
Thank
Tim
you, Lorena.
and Adam.
And I'm pleased you sorted your sound out. It's amazing, isn't it? Once you go live and you feel a bit of the fear, how things can sort themselves out.
Yeah.
So
Hi, Robert.
Lenwood, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I've been talking about content this week, and even though this is the digital download, I actually printed it out on paper. But we talk a lot about relationship building, and it is very important to build relationships on social media. But one of the key things that you have to do as part of your brand building is your content. And the content is where you really demonstrate your expertise and you share your insights. And earlier this week, Paul Denham, who I follow, and I think he follows a number of people on DLA Ignite. He shared something from the Information Technology Services Marketing Association about what at least tech buyers, right, are looking for from their sellers. And it's really important, because what it says is that account managers need to be more than just relationship builders. They must also be thought leadership sellers, which means that it's not just sharing corporate brochures and the material that's being, put out by the marketing team for your company, but really contributing, I'll put it simply, value, right? You have to add some value to that relationship for the buyer. And it says, what it says is provide me with unique perspectives on the market and technology solutions. That's the number one thing that the modern technology buyers looking for.
So the thing about corporate content and content that comes from marketing, though, Lenwood, is you're not going to get fired for using it.
Well, yeah, but you're also not going to win any customers with that, because
oh yes. I mean, research shows that people come to social networks to be social, not to read brochures.
Exactly. But that's a good point. You're not going to get fired for selling your corporate brochure, but you might get fired for not making your number.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is another good point. Yeah.
You decide where you want to take your risks.
Go on, Matt.
I actually posted on this morning. It says it's quite bizarre, but I had some conversations recently with people who work for companies that are all over social, which is a phrase that's bandied about quite a lot, and they're told to repost, reshare, like the corporate content that comes out. But if you look at the corporate content, some of these organizations, 20,000 plus followers, they're getting 3 or 4 or 5 likes, comments that are all from the organization within, so it's all their own people repeating or liking the content that the organizations have produced. So it's actually not going anywhere. It's not being heard. It's just like fire and forget. But it should, in my mind, it shouldn't be about the company posting something and everybody piling in and liking it and growing it that way. It should actually be the company endorsing the content that the individuals are producing, because it's the personal brand now that is getting everything out there, that's getting the message out. So that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, that's I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think another key point that often gets missed in this content thing is the customization piece, because every client really wants things customized for them. So in order to do that, you have to create a community really around that's, your ideal customer, but is based on who you are and what you deliver. And in that way, you can shape and manipulate that corporate content, not necessarily resharing it, but putting your own spin on it and creating your own content that will resonate more with your target audience or your ideal customer profile.
So what do you think about Gary Stockton's point about he's suspicious about company posts? It seems like it's more of a PR player out being a great workplace or something like that.
Well, that's exactly right. Everybody's going to say the same. Who's going to come out and say my company stinks, or we're great at this, but we're not so good at that? Nobody says that. So all the corporate content that goes out says exactly the same thing, which is that we're great. And so it really isn't adding anything. It isn't adding anything for the buyer. And when the thing that's driving this, which I think is also sometimes lost is that the buyer has changed, right? The seller has to, this isn't like some hack, some trick that we're trying to, pawn off on people. The buyer has changed. The buyer has different expectations based on things that other companies that are digital first, that have really more in B2C, that have really, they've perfected this idea of customization, the reviews, getting value long before you ever buy anything. Who buys anything without a review nowadays, right? If you're an individual, right? So it's just that B2B is now catching up to that, and there just has to be much more customization for the B2B buyer. And I think the only way really to do that is through your people.
You make a really good
absolutely.
You make a really good point, Len. One of the things that's often talked about in our industry is sales enablement, right? Which is, in my opinion, rather passé, because it's what you just said, which is buyer enablement, right? And the idea is to support the buyer and the consumer and the customer, and not ourselves. And the idea that we've got to run around town waving our flag is no longer interesting. And people want to do things for themselves. So the more we enable that process with the proper content, as you're talking about, and actually give them information, the more likely it is they're even going to want to talk to us in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, that's really being customer centric, or being, buyer centric is, what I think it's statistic is something like 68% of sellers say that they think about the buyer all the time. And then 23% of buyers say that. The sellers think about buyers all the time. So obviously there's a disconnect between what sellers and buyers think. So yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, Thomas.
Lorena, have you got any views at all on content at all?
Yes, I was thinking about it. For example, if you are putting always content on your company page, what, for example, we do with some of our service providers, I think you have to generate a conversation from your company page. I mean, it's not a matter of putting always information and content. You have to generate this interaction with your buyer. It's not to show all what you have done or what you are doing. And I think there is the point. We have an experience with one of our clients. We started putting a lot of content on company page, on their law firm company page. And this has motivated, for example, the managing partner to start putting own content on his profile. And what we are doing, for example, now is taking his content from his individual profile and sharing it through the company page. Not always mentioning that he was the author or mentioning the author of the, but I mean, so we are working. We are really, I mean, the corporate, the company page is going to be the voice of the firm, so we expect that this will be reflected on the metrics. And we are going to compare then when the managing put the information or the content, and when we reshared it at the very beginning, we reshared it. We put, for example, managing partner set this on his profile, but then we said, no, maybe. So we have to try and to work really aiming at having this interaction with the potential buyer.
Yeah.
I think that's really important that that we trial things. At the end of the day, it's most people, I think, when they understand the dynamics of the social space, they understand that people, as Tim said, people don't go to social to read brochures. They go to social to be social, and you're social with people, not social with business. So it's about forging those relationships between individuals. And I think that when most people get that as a concept, they're at least pointing in the right direction, but there's a huge amount of fear attached to making that step, particularly within conservative businesses, law firms and professional services tending to be more conservative than most. And the idea that you would take your 100,000, 10,000 lawyers and say to them, you each go off there and do your own thing, is really scary. So much of success in this space we see from people starting to take those steps, having their actions validated by getting some success, and then being able to grow from that. Tim and I went to Singapore a few years ago and were working with a Singaporean company. And one of the people there said a fantastic quote, which was, knowing but not doing is folly. And that's absolutely right, because, you tell people what they need to do. They say, yeah, absolutely, that's what I need to do. And then they go away and don't do it. So actually getting people to take action is the challenge. And we all know as a team, because, we end up mentoring people and helping them through this process of learning by iteration and doing things over and over again and trying and pushing the boundaries and moving forward, that if you just give somebody a list of, here's what you need to do. You need to do a really cool profile. You need to connect to lots of people. You need to engage those people. You need to publish content. It's simple, really. And people go, yeah, simple. And, every company that we have ever worked with has had 5 social media masterclasses and then not done anything off the back of it, because we know that simply transmitting to people what they need to do doesn't help them to take action. Understanding what their own personal barriers are to taking action and helping them overcome those is the way forward.
And we've all had to do it.
This is where the one-to-ones. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, that's part of the digital skills building. It's something that everyone has to go through. I don't think anyone naturally just is great at. I know Tim and Adam have been through it and have coached many of us through it. I like the point that you made, Lorena, which is so critical that I think maybe is lost, right? Especially in professional services, which is that it's not one way communication, right? The goal is to generate a conversation. So when we have a goal like, okay, we want to generate conversations, then we're more apt to experiment to figure out, well, what is the best way to generate those conversations? And then we let the data drive our way forward, right? After we experiment, what was successful at creating the conversations that we want to have. That's critically important in professional services, because in order for a client to leave their existing service provider and move to you, in professional services, you really have to give that client an aha moment. You have to communicate something to them that their existing service provider hasn't communicated to them. So the more conversations that you have, the more opportunities that you have to create that aha moment for the customer, where you're sharing your insights and demonstrating your expertise, the better the more likely you are going to be to get a new client.
I would just add to that, and this is part of the challenge with what we do and how we help people with this. People don't go to social because they want to go to social. They go to social because they want to see something on YouTube, or they're responding to something on Facebook, or they've got a DM or something interesting on LinkedIn, or whatever it happens to be. But they do not go to social because it's time for me to go to social. Right. And I think we get caught up in that crap. And when we're talking to people, it's not about you need to go to social and you need to put content on and you need to engage in social, because you automatically create this back, this fear and this, there's something I need to learn how to do. They're already doing it. Are you on Facebook? Do you use Twitter? Are you on LinkedIn? Do you follow Instagram? They're already doing these things. So what you need to do is to be able to do what you're already doing, but in a way that impacts your business and provides your customers and your friends and all the people you see and talk to every day on social already in a way that helps them understand what you do and show them the value of what you do beyond just the fact that you want to show pictures of your family on Facebook or the business or articles on LinkedIn, whatever it may be. But this idea that you've got to go to social, whatever the heck that is, you need to be doing what you're already doing. You're already doing this. Now we need to do it on purpose.
Kevin makes a really good point, Thomas, there. Imagine your prospects having a conversation or topics-based discussion online, and you used to drive or fly to that meeting if you got a chance, and they were discussing that online. Then you would turn up on their feed and drop in their knowledge. It's a great point.
Yeah.
And Will says, agree, Thomas. People need to understand and feel the benefits. Sometimes they require it requires a real mindset change.
Oh, definitely. And that's in part, right. When it's not a blame game, but it's just a part of the evolution, right, of social media. Okay. And these platforms, they started out one way, and while we were all living our lives, they've morphed and they've changed, and now they're integral to how we communicate. Right. So it's just another way of communication that happens to be much more rich in terms of the interaction.
Yesterday,
okay. Sorry, no, go on.
No, I had yesterday an interview. I do interviews with lawyers. It sounds boring, but it's not boring.
No, it sounds really interesting.
Lawyers are always very boring, I know, but actually not that boring that we imagine. And I interviewed this guy, 33 years old, and he's a lawyer with a technology focus. He did a master's degree in Stanford in law, science, and technology. And he doesn't use social. Incredible. And I asked him, he's Mickey, why don't you use social? After we had talked about the importance of talking about one and telling what we do, and talking about the difference in our Latin American culture, where we are very shy and we don't like to talk about us. While Americans, for example, US, they talk about them and they are very good sellers. Lenwood, what do you think about that? But
I mean, we like to talk about ourselves. I don't know how good we are at selling, but
no, I mean that Americans have Latin Americans and Americans are different in that way. So and I was trying to convince him, and I think he will. He is now going to read an article I wrote about the importance of being in social. But really, it was for me so a kind of strange to talk to somebody that is in technology. He has a very interesting association, hyper law, and is absolutely full in internet, but not on social. So it's what you mentioned, Lenwood. We have to work on this education. What DLA does. It's not to be on social, it's to generate conversations and not only to sell. So this change of mindset, and it's not from one day to
that's the key point.
Great point, Lorena.
The generating conversations thing. At the end of the day, if you're selling sneakers or you're selling chocolate or you're selling breakfast cereal, then you don't need to generate conversations. They're transactional purchases. They carry a low risk. For anybody in the B2B space or anybody selling a complex, high-value product, a property or a car,
BMW car,
indeed. Anybody that and certainly in the B2B space where you might be selling a transformational piece of software or something in a business, no one buys it from a brochure. They buy it from conversations. So all we're selling in the social space is the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody. And when we are selling the conversation has to be about you. You go to a cocktail party and you shake hands with somebody and say, "Hi, I'm Lenwood, and I've got this fantastic piece of software that can help revolutionize your business." And oh,
Where did she go?
Gone? Yeah.
Oh, they went to get drinks.
The person just walks away because nobody wants that. People want to have conversations. They want to build trust and friendship. And the great thing about social is it gives us the ability to be able to scale that. You know, in the old days, you used to have to go and have a lot of lunches and a lot of breakfasts and meet a lot of people, and it took a long time. And now you can do it at scale. If you've got 1,000 followers or 10,000 followers or 100,000 followers, the people that want to have a conversation with you at that moment will step up and engage with your content, and you'll start to strike up a conversation with them. But you're absolutely right. You know, there has to be that mindset shift, because I send an email out to people and they don't respond. I place an advert in front of people and they don't respond. I'll do an event and they don't respond. Why are they going to respond now on social? Well, they're not, of course. I have to have a different way of having the conversation.
Robert made a really good point.
He did, Matt. This one.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I've been watching it as it's gone down the feed, and I hope it doesn't drop off the bottom. So we just caught that in time. I mean, that's a really important point, because social that embodies what social is. It's helping, and I can't remember the exact definition, but guanshui in China, it's obligation, it's relationships through or success through reciprocal obligations or something. I help you, you help me. I can't remember the exact direct translation, but guanshui in China is helping others, and you will get back in return. Not necessarily you don't go out to help somebody because you're going to get something back, but that process of you helping someone out generally facilitates somebody's desire to help you, or getting what to get, not necessarily getting exactly what you want, but actually getting back some benefit in return, whether that's just feeling good about yourself. It's really important.
And Kevin re-emphasizes that as well. I think that's a really good point. And Brandon is Brandon. Hi, Brandon. Yes.
But coming back to Lenwood's point there, companies don't have conversations, people do. So that's where the corporate stuff doesn't really succeed. It's the people that succeed in having the conversations, and they just happen to work for a particular company.
Yeah.
So let's move on, actually, because Matt, you've got a subject that you want to talk about, don't you? So give you the floor.
Yes, yeah, it's quite an interesting fact I picked up earlier on this week. Now, just rolling back the clock a good few years, back in the 90s, I served in the Royal Air Force, and since I came out, I've been quite keen on employing or hiring ex-forces personnel, because I think they offer a lot that you can't put into a box. They're not square pegs for square holes. They're round pegs that you put in a square hole, but you'll get a lot more back. And I found out a fact this week that only 5% of UK armed forces are on LinkedIn, and it's inevitable.
That admit they're there.
Say again.
That admit they're there.
That admit they're there, yes.
Yes.
But they're there. They're not necessarily doing anything. That's so 5% of armed forces personnel have a presence on social media. Now, it's inevitable nowadays that they will leave the armed forces. It's not a job until you retire. It's generally sort of you've got 5, 10, 15 years or whatever. So you will at some point come out and get a job in Civvy Street. And that transition process is getting more and more important to be on social media and on LinkedIn, especially to find work. So I thought it was quite an astounding fact that only 5% of people are on LinkedIn, or 5% of armed forces people. And I just wonder what that was like around the rest of the world. So I mean, we've got quite a good demographic here. I don't know whether there's a similar sort of element in the US or Canada or wherever, but I know there's quite a few active people on LinkedIn talking about transition of armed forces personnel. But it is quite an interesting area, and if they're going to be coming out of the armed forces, they're going to have to get onto social media, and they're going to have to get onto LinkedIn especially, not necessarily apply for jobs that are advertised on there, but use LinkedIn to build their own personal brand, and then use that brand to get work, to have conversations. It's all about, as Lenwood said, having conversations.
So
it's interesting because
I was just going to say that. Why do you think that's the case? Is that because they've been within the armed forces machine, which is quite an insular, almost like a country in itself, and it hasn't been necessary because they're not selling and striking deals in quite the same way? So is it because they're not used to it? Is it because they're scared? Is it because it's just a knowledge gap? What is the challenge? Because 5% is like, I mean, that's almost a complete absence, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. I think it's a combination of things. I think you made a very good point there, Adam, that it is a bubble, it is a different culture. So you could be totally immersed in the armed forces and not actually set foot in the outside world because all your needs are there, especially now that Tesco's do home delivery and other supermarkets are available. They do home delivery. That's the only time you would have had to go out to a supermarket, because the NAFI, which is the Navy Air Force, Navy Army Air Force Institute, they've got basically all shops on site. You could be totally self-contained within the armed forces, so they emerge out of the armed forces and into Civvy Street, and it's a different world. But yes, I think there's a certain extent they don't need to, because they have their own individual armed forces network, and you move around on a basis. But I also think there's a degree of being fearful of being too free with information on social media. However, I don't know what the US and other overseas armed forces do, but the UK MOD publishes guidelines for armed force for those people in armed forces in the armed forces that want to partake in social media. They provide guidance and they actively encourage it. And they've said by their own admission that the social media has helped the world understand the role of the Army, Navy and Air Force.
One of the things that's interesting is the fact that the UK Army have a social media, whether the platoon or whatever it is, and as soon as the US and the UK, I don't know about the other armies, move into a particular area, the first thing they do is they deploy the social media team, and so influencer marketing, which is the best way to describe it, is actually reduced IODs in Afghanistan.
Oh wow!
So implementation of social media and is being used actively within the armed forces in both the UK and the US. And it's interesting that they're not, even though they're seeing the benefit of that on the ground, they're not rolling that out through or showing the benefits of that to other people.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, we went to a talk, didn't we, from somebody that was in the armed forces, and they
were in. I have a friend who's in the social media, whether the regiment or whatever they're called.
I wasn't able to find out the statistics for participants in the U.S. Armed Forces on LinkedIn, but I did come upon LinkedIn for Veterans. So if there are any members of the armed forces that are watching this, you can get a free premium career subscription from LinkedIn for 1 year, and so can your spouse. So just put that out there. Maybe I'll grab this link and put it. I don't know, where do I put it? I don't usually chat on this, but oh, I see. Okay.
You can put it, I don't know if you can see the chat. You can put links in there. It doesn't move the link to all the different social media platforms.
That's really interesting that you get free LinkedIn Premium.
Yeah.
Do they get that in the UK?
You might
I'm
check.
not sure. I will have a look at that.
Because I'm only getting US because I'm in the US. I don't know. Did you guys? I tried to send this. I don't know. I guess it doesn't.
I'm not going to check now because I'll probably end up disconnecting myself. But
Okay.
but
All right.
I'll stick it in the feed at the afterwards, whether you can.
Okay.
And if there's any links.
I was just wanting to add another angle to what you were talking about there, Matt, and that was with respect to HR and resumes, and whether you're in the military or whether you're a civilian like most of us. When you're looking for a job, the way of doing that and the way of promoting yourself has radically changed, isn't it?
Right. How many hours have you got here? I stuck my rant on CVs.
To me, that's the main point, right? And the
Absolutely.
social world is where everything is.
I don't see the need for CVs anymore.
I
think that they're totally out of the way. Your profile is your passive. Your profile is your passive profile that works for you. You can use your LinkedIn profile. You can print, even if you want to print it off into hard paper, you can print your LinkedIn profile off. You've optimized it with all your keywords. It's searchable. You've got far more information there than any CV. They say CVs, you've got me started now. You got these CVs, they say three pages on a CV, and they only ever read the first page anyway. So the idea of a profile that you can progressively lead the reader through and maintain their interest is absolutely fantastic. I don't know why companies don't just say, send us a link to your LinkedIn profile, because it's infinitely more successful. It looks at all the article. It gives you an indication into your activity and how busy you are and how insightful you are and how participative and how social. This sounds like one of Matt's rants off the breakfast burrito, doesn't it? So anyway.
But in addition to that, you have to remember that LinkedIn is wonderful for the purpose you just outlined. There's no question about it. Although it's not meant to be your CV, so that's a different conversation. But nonetheless, what's the first thing somebody does when they see you've applied for a position? They don't look at your resume. They might look at LinkedIn, but I think they're more likely to look at your Facebook page, or maybe even your Instagram, but certainly all of the above. So the idea that you can still have the same kinds of images and the same kinds of activities on your Facebook page when you're looking for a job as you might have otherwise, right? You have to make sure that your image is consistent with what the culture and the employer might be looking for by way of that position and person.
Odessa sums it up nicely, doesn't she, in the comment there? Recruitment is a clunky sector that is rusty and needs updated. C is a redundant piece of most CVs are complete fiction.
Great point.
And taking somebody on is about cultural fit, not about what it says on a piece of paper.
Odessa and I have had a few conversations on this.
Tapestry of lies.
Sorry, Adam. What did you say?
I just said my CV is a tapestry of lies.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you can't do is you can't hide behind your social behavior on LinkedIn. Okay, you can weave a tapestry of lies on a CV, for want of a better word. But if you go through on check somebody's LinkedIn profile and check their behaviors, you can't hide it. You get a good idea as to character of the person and cultural fit.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lorena, what were you going to say?
Yes, I have a question.
Lorena.
Have you, maybe yes, and I have missed it, but interviewed HR people and ask them about how do they or where do they look for candidates, or where they cross information about their candidates, or appliers for jobs?
Yeah, well, they generally have. Sorry, carry on.
No, sorry, please. You.
The old adage, or the old method, is that you see a job advertised, you stick a CV and a covering letter in, it goes into a big pile. If it's a huge pile, an electronic pile now, if you like, it goes through an applicant tracking system, which formats it down to looks for keywords, etc., and then if the format's wrong, it just spits it out as junk, and then it creates a short list that maybe a human being will look at, and then you've probably got a few CVs that actually manage to get through this applicant tracking system, and they may not be the right person. But what you're actually doing is you're selecting a shortlist basically on what a computer has said based on your CV. You can do keyword searches of LinkedIn profiles, and that sort of thing. So why they still use CVs? But they do use the CV is still the sort of the pivotal point of a job application, and it's something that needs to change. I'm taking us down a little bit of a rabbit hole here. I delve into it's one of my soapboxes.
So can I? So in terms of the preps, a number of people wanted to talk about the return to work. I don't know because Thomas likes talking about this, and we usually give the last 15 minutes to Thomas, and we're kind of 5 minutes there. But I know that Thomas wanted to talk about it. There's been a number of articles over the last week about people that are saying you have to go back to the office, and I'm still amazed about the story. I think it was last week, Thomas, where you said some company said you've got to be back to the office, and the next day 50% of the employees resigned. And so what do people think about? Are we going to go back to the office? What is hybrid? What do we? And this wraps into this discussion about talent, because at the end of the day, there's a regardless of what's happened, there's a battle for talent.
Yeah, huge battle for talent. Thomas, you want to kick it? I don't want to steal your because I know you had an article.
That's perfectly fine. At whatever point you want to add it, it's all good. We all bring our elements to it. It's great. Yeah, there's as Tim said, I have a client that actually went through this process and is still trying to figure out how to get out of the hole they dug. But in addition to that, there was some research that came out from Monster.com that was published and written about in an article CNBC. Which spoke to the fact that 95% of the people that were interviewed and asked by Monster.com said they were considering quitting. Right? 95%. Now, that doesn't mean 95% of people are going to quit. That's not what that means. That's not how I take it. But the very fact that stat says anything at that kind of extreme number should scare the living bejesus out of most organizations that are fragile and vulnerable to some of the points you just made, especially yourself, Tim, with respect to the shortage and the hunt and the need for talent, right? So the dynamic has changed. But what's really important about that, and I think it gets missed in this, is the companies that are doing the things that we talk about, every day, and certainly in these meetings, the companies that are out there, that are connected to their people, that are active on social, active digitally, and actually speaking about themselves in a human way with their people, with their employees. They're not the ones that are vulnerable to that process, because their people are either telling them where they're at and having that conversation and working out the question that Tim asked with respect to, are we going to go back hybrid? Are we going back full time? Are we going back at all? Whatever that is. Right? But they're having those conversations. All the other companies, apparently, according to this, 95% of them are not having those conversations. And that's where the challenge is. The challenge isn't that's happening. The challenge is you don't know it's happening, right? You have no idea what your teams or your people are thinking or wondering or wanting and what they went through during COVID, other than what you read in the New York Post article or New York Times or wherever it was, right? You don't need to read it there. You need to go talk to your people. And the way to do that, as we talk about all the time, of course, is not to send an email, right? In fact, it's quite likely your people will delete your email, right?
It'll probably have the same effect as an email campaign.
Yes.
or worse, right? Or let's send them all a memo like my client did and see how well that goes. So it's a method of communication, and the idea, and we talked about this earlier, that you have to be on social. Social is different things for different people. Whatever way you talk and whatever way you communicate, whether that's Teams or Slack, or whether that's Facebook or a group page on Facebook or Instagram, I don't care. But that's where your people are. They're in and amongst all of those things. And if you want to be known and be a leader, and I say that word very carefully, if you want to be a leader, then you need to be out in front of your people and be talking to them and communicating with them and be in touch with them. And then that stat from Monster hopefully doesn't reflect the reality that you're going to find, September 1st or whatever date you've announced everybody needs to be back. But in fact, now you're having a conversation with your people, just as you might with customers, go figure. But it's the same. It's the same process. It's nothing different. This is all about, as everybody has pointed out, engagement, conversation, communication in real time with real people.
It is funny though that you drawing the parallel there. It's really funny though that most organizations get that they need to have a dialogue, not a monologue, with their customers. That they need to be having a conversation. And Will's bit that Tim just flashed up then, it's absolutely a reflection of the overall culture of the business. If you're on social, you get to have a dialogue with your staff. So this is not about sending out a memo. This is what we're going to do. It's about having a conversation and litmus testing the water. What do my staff want me to do? At the end of the day, the business, whatever its objectives are, needs to be a collective. When Tim and I set up this business, we didn't think for a moment that we had the monopoly on good ideas. The more people, the more good people that we get within the organization, the stronger we become, because we're crowdsourcing what people want to do and the best ways of being able to do it, because nobody's infallible. And yet organizations, if they're stuck in the dark ages, they assume that I'm the boss, what I say goes. I'm going to send this communication out and it will trickle down through the organization and everybody will do as they're told. Well, yeah. And 50% of them leave on the very day that happens, because people won't tolerate it anymore. And good job too.
I think that what's happened is that in the past, what we had was we had a work persona and we had a home persona. And what happened was that the bosses didn't really know. You didn't really know whether somebody owned a dog or a cat or whatever. But what happens now is that we have a life persona. So you can see in my house, you can see pictures on the wall, you can see books, I can see the guitars behind Adam. All of us, we can see, we know each other. Dogs have walked in, kids have walked in, cats have walked in. We've all seen it. We have a life persona. And that's the thing that's changed.
I'm in the unfinished loft extension.
Oh man, that's such a great point, Tim. Before I left corporate America, I had a meeting with the executive vice president that I reported to, and in that meeting, I don't know, I was telling some story. In that meeting, she said to me, it's a one-on-one. She says to me, "I don't care about your dog," and when she said that to me, I knew instantly, although I had already suspected it, she didn't care about me. I was just an object, somebody that did things for her and the company, and I as a person did not matter. That's what she said to me. And
Lemwood, we don't care, mate. We don't care.
Can you imagine saying that? Anyway, but she's from a different generation. And it's a different mindset. It's that she referred to herself as a hired gun, but it's a different mindset that it just doesn't fly anymore. Can I just read a quote to you?
Sure.
This is a quote was posted by a McKinsey guy this morning. This is what it says: In many ways, having more of our employees working remotely is a good thing. It gives people a lot more flexibility and freedom and makes them happier about the job because they're able to put their lives together in ways that matter to them. This is true for men and women both. I think the additional flexibility makes Symantec more attractive to all employees and helps us get better people. Okay, that quote is from November 2012.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what we are seeing right now is actually the continuation and acceleration of something that has been going on for quite some time. And what we will see at the end of this period, I would say 5 to 10 years, is whole markets completely transformed by the organizations that get this, along with being digital first and social, will be at the top winners. And those companies that, some of which are the leaders today, who are kind of stuck, they are not going to be at the top anymore. I guarantee it, because this what we're going through right now is just the kind of thing that transforms industries and changes markets, because the people who are at the top, whether it be Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley or anybody else, they don't get it, they don't adapt, and they lose.
There was a report, wasn't there, a Gartner report recently that had, or was it the McKinsey report? People with digital skills are outperforming those without the digital skills, and I think this whole working framework. Someone at the door. This whole working framework is such that there was somebody said, was it one of the big banks said, you've all got to be back in the office?
Yeah, Goldman Sachs
basically said, well, all their competition are now going to pick off all their talent.
Yeah, that was Citibank. Right. I think Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley said everybody's got to be back in the office, and Citibank has been like, oh, we're going hybrid, and their hopes are it's to poach all the top talent, because nobody wants that, and that's exactly what will happen.
Mm.
Totally agree that the world of HR has been turned upside down. And the way we recruit. But remember two things. A, the idea that talent is so scarce, and the market by way of the economy that drives that isn't unchangeable, and that will change. So that's number one. Number two, there's a whole area of people who don't have the opportunity of hybrid work because they're either in retail, right, or they're in manufacturing, or they're in production of some kind or another. So this is one part of the economy. Mike Garrison made a great point to me earlier this morning in regard to that he was concerned that this was actually creating a divide and a split between those that do have the ability to do that versus those who don't. And I thought that was a really interesting point that Mike brought up, and needs to be considered in this. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that, there's definitely a divide between, those people who can work remotely and those people, because of the nature of their work, simply cannot do that. And I think what will begin to happen is that those industries where people cannot, because of the nature of the work remotely, will begin to change how the nature of the work and how people work, so that they can compete with people. So I think it will be both compete for people. So it will be both compensation and how long people are working in person, because ultimately it's a giant ecosystem, right? And all these different industries and factors are competing with for people in the pipeline that are, in elementary school today, teenagers, right? And so it may take a while, but the nature of work for those industries will change as well, because they'll have to start to create an environment that's attractive for people. So it won't happen overnight, but
I think that's true, but I think that there's always been a divide, hasn't there? So, you know,
Yeah.
you work in a corporate and you've got someone that's your boss. And for some people, that's a real problem. So you start your own business and you haven't got anyone that's a boss. You know, you have certain things that you have to do. So you, Len, would run your own business, you work from home until a client says, I want you to come to a meeting in the office. And then you go to the meeting in the office. And that office could be in Manhattan, or it could be in New Jersey, or it could be in Seattle. You know, it could be anywhere, basically. And yet, if you work in one of those environments where you don't have the option for hybrid working, so because you're a chef, or you're working in a factory, or you're working in a warehouse, or you're a delivery driver, or whatever, you potentially get the benefit of having a very close-knit team. You know, kitchen team are incredibly close-knit. They're like a military unit in terms of how they share workload and how they pass information between them. And you know, we live in the countryside. When we have our garbage collected, the guys that turn up love their jobs. They love their jobs. You know, I would say, I don't want that job. They say it's brilliant. I get up really early in the morning. I'm finished by lunchtime. I'm out in the fresh air. I'm fit. I'm healthy. I get to chat to nice people and ignore the people I don't like. You know, when you sell it to someone like that, what could be better than that as a job? And my son, 17 years old, if I said to him, working in an office, sitting at a computer, he'd go, I would rather be dead. I can imagine nothing worse than doing that. And yeah, he wants to earn lots of money. He wants to be entrepreneurial. He wants to do interesting stuff, but he doesn't want to do that. And I think that the challenge is not one of, well, you're working in a warehouse, therefore you don't have the option for hybrid working. The challenge is that people that work in our industry, let's assume you're a lawyer. If you're a lawyer, you look down on people that work at the checkout in a shop. And one of the great things about the last 18 months is it's shown everybody that the people that matter the most are not the people that earn necessarily the most money. And I think that we need to start to embrace those roles that really keep our countries going. So, yeah, you know, collecting garbage is vital. It's vital in a way that being a management consultant like us isn't vital.
But, you know, social media is the great equalizer, isn't it, Adam?
Absolutely right it is. Absolutely right, Thomas.
I had just on a slightly lighter note, I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and we were talking about how, you know, when you meet people face to face and you haven't met anywhere else but social, how your perception is different. So, you know, for example, Eric is 6'6", I'm 6'3", yet our head height on social media is exactly the same. So we all perceive everybody else as being the same height as us. And then you go and stand up next to somebody, and some of them are 5'3", some of them are 6'6".
Are you really 6'3"?
Yeah.
And is Eric really 6'6"?
Yeah, he's huge.
I don't want to meet either one of you. This is good.
I will never.
Well, conversation.
Don't worry, Thomas, because you know that I'm only 4'1".
The person I was speaking to, he said, well, you know, I perceived he was 6'3" as well, because he said, oh no, I'm 5'4".
That's a great point. That is a really good point. Yeah. Social media gives us the ability to all present ourselves in the way that we want, and it's impactful for what we want to do. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Kevin's comment.
Kevin's 5'6".
Love it.
If the audience want to put their height in all now, then please do.
This is like your CV. Just tell the truth.
I just grew.
Thanks, Brandon, for joining us. Anyway, have you got any words of wisdom to finish up, Thomas? Because normally you have
a peach of some kind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I would just say to all those organizations that aren't sure how that memo is going to turn out, that if you haven't picked that up from what we've been talking about, and you know, here's the thing about social. I tell this to everybody. Social isn't about let's do this and see what happens next week or next month or in the next report. Social is right now. It's real time. So you can start right now. You can go and start connecting with your people, your teams, wherever they are, whether that's Slack or Teams, or whether that's LinkedIn, or whether that's Facebook. And it doesn't matter. What matters is that you start touching your people in a human way on social. And the sooner you do that, the more likely it is that A, you're going to rethink the whole memo thing, and B, you're going to realize, holy shoot, I am not in sync with my people at all. We need to step back and rethink this. Right?
It was Eric Doyle who said on this a couple of weeks ago. He said, "Do you know, not understanding social is okay. It's all right. That's fine. Right now, in this time, yes, it's a we may not understand it, but we have a chance to actually learn about it. But not understanding social in a year's time, that's inexcusable." And what we need to do as organizations, as people, is understand about social and get those digital skills for us and our employees as well.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
So we're at the time. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very
Lorena,
much.
Thank you for dialing in from Peru. It's been fun. Thank you so much for taking part.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be with you, with DLA, and for learning so much from you.
Thank you. You're welcome. It's great to have you. Matt, thanks for your guest appearance and all your insight. It's been fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's been
Lenwood, your energy, as always. Thank you. Thomas,
Pleasure.
your insight, and Adam for being boring. It's a match made in heaven.
Again.
And of course, Kevin, Odessa, William, Robert,
Michael,
Brandon.
It's like a generation game, isn't it?
Yeah, Gary.
Get the toy.
Yeah, and thank you for all the comments. It's great having all the comments coming in as we discussed. So we'll be here next week.
All right.
Have a great
See you
week,
next week,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you
Have a good
very
weekend.
much. Bye.